in a road that used to cost you your bells if you weren't careful. See, back in the 1850s, the men driving wagon teams over these mountains, their horses wore strings of bells on the harness. The more bells you had, the better driver you were. It meant you knew this road, knew the grades, knew the cliffs, knew how to handle a loaded team on terrain that'd kill a lesser man. But there was a catch. You got yourself stuck and needed another man to pull you out. Those bells were his. That was the deal. You earned them, you kept them. You lost them, you walked away quiet. This road right here, the Howardsville Turnpike, it's been twisting through central Virginia since before the Civil War. Today, we're gonna ride it, and I'm gonna tell you the story of what used to move through here and why it mattered. Stick around. We're taking two wheels through 200 years of history today. And by the end, you'll know exactly why we're calling this ride Bells and Bateau.
Are you ready? Let's go!
Miles through Nelson County with 3,000 feet of climbing. That's not a casual afternoon spin. So today, we're rolling on the Wanderer. For a route like this, paved connectors, gravel climbs, hard-pack ridge roads. The Wanderer's got the longest legs in the stable, and today we're gonna need 'em. We rolled out from what used to be Williams Grocery in Shipman. Gas, groceries, game check station, the kind of place that was the center of this community for generations. Closed up during COVID and never came back. Just an empty parking lot now. Feels fitting, actually. This whole ride is about things that used to be. Roads that used to matter. Towns that used to hum. We're gonna see a lot of that today. This whole stretch along the James River was tobacco country. Big plantation operations, fertile bottomland, and a river that connected everything to Richmond. The families out here weren't just farming. They were building an economy, and the river was their highway. The town of Norwood down the road there used to be called New Market. By 1794, there was already a tobacco warehouse at the mouth of the Tye River, right where it runs into the James. Planters were floating hogsheads of tobacco downstream on bateau, long before any road through here existed. over James River Road, the road changes names from Union Hill Drive to Cabell Road. That's not a coincidence. The Cabell family owned this land, one of the most powerful planter dynasties in Nelson County. By 1780, William Cabell Sr. at Union Hill was running his plantation with 100 enslaved people, and in March of 1865, right at the end of the war, General Sheridan and his cavalry camped right here in Union Hill in Norwood. The same Sheridan who was pushing east to cut off Lee's retreat to Petersburg. He slept on this ground, rode these same hills. After the war, William Daniel Cabell opened a school at Norwood, took in 47 Confederate veterans whose educations had been interrupted. Men who'd been soldiers 6 months before, sitting in a classroom on the banks of the James. That school eventually burned to the ground in 2012. And right there, that's Bon Air, built around 1812 by Dr. George Cabell, Jr., son of Nicholas Cabell of Liberty Hall. Sits up on that hill overlooking the James River bottomland, like it was put there to remind everybody exactly who owned this valley. The bricks were made right here on the property. Some say the design was influenced by Thomas Jefferson himself. The Cabells and Jefferson ran in the same circles, and you can see it in those lines. George sold it off before he died in 1827, and it passed through a string of owners over the next 150 years. But it's on the National Register of Historic Places now, and somebody's putting the work into bringing it back. That's the thing about this corridor. The bones are still here. The land remembers. Right here's where it all comes together. The Rockfish River meeting the James. Before the turnpike, before the canal, before any of this was organized, this was a bateau landing. Long, flat-bottomed boats, 50 or 60 feet long, poled upstream by crews of 2 or 3 men, most of them enslaved, carrying tobacco, iron, and grain back and forth to Richmond. The canal reached Howardsville in 1834, and for a little while this was a genuine river town, boat basin, stores, mills, the whole thing. Then the railroad came, then the canal quit. And around 1887, it was all over. Bells and bateaux. That's what this whole road was built for, right here at this river. And here she is, the Howardsville Turnpike. Engineered in the 1840s and 50s to connect the Shenandoah Valley all the way to this river right behind us. 53 miles of road, through some of the roughest mountain terrain in central Virginia. Took nearly 10 years to build. Toll booths, construction disputes, and the project ran out of money more than once. They spec'd this road careful, 30 feet wide on the flat, 20 on the hills, and 12 feet on the cliff faces. 12 feet. 2 wagons couldn't pass each other on a cliff. Somebody had to back up. And that's where the bell teams come back in. The horses pulling these loaded wagons wore strings of bells on their harness. You already know what happened if you got stuck. By the time they finished this road in 1858, the railroad had already punched through the Blue Ridge at Afton. The turnpike was barely open before it started being left behind. On the bluff, that right there is 2 buildings in one. The Greek Revival side with the columns and the double doors. That's Howardsville Methodist Church, circa 1851. The brick addition attached to it, that's George Lodge number 32. Founded in 1791, just 13 years after Virginia's Grand Lodge itself stood up in Richmond. One of the oldest Masonic lodges in the entire state, and the second lodge in Virginia ever named after George Washington. The men who ran this river town, the planters, the merchants, the turnpike shareholders, they were meeting up there behind closed doors. And here's what gets me about that building. It survived the canal shutting down, survived the turnpike going quiet, survived the railroad making both of them obsolete. According to the Library of Congress, it's one of the only significant structures in Howardsville that survived Hurricane Camille. 230 years of Virginia history, still standing on that bluff. And as of early 2025, somebody's trying to save the church side of it. A local contractor who grew up right around here bought it and is working to restore it. So maybe that building's not done yet. Once you leave Howardsville, the road climbs back up into the hills. Out here it gets quiet, always has been quiet. The kind of country where people kept to themselves, worked their land, and didn't much need the outside world. The Rockfish River's been running through these parts since before anybody put a name on it, at least 1730 by the records. The turnpike crossed it, and the early settlers followed it up from the James. Water tells you where to go out here, if you know how to read it. end of the day, we traveled 35 miles in over 200 years. But we end up right back where we started. Funny how that works. The river town's gone quiet. The turnpike's forgotten. The grocery store's closed. But the roads are still here, and the stories are still out there, waiting on anybody willing to go find them. These old roads got more history in them than most books ever bothered to write down. All you gotta do is get out there and ride them. Pay enough attention, and they'll tell you their story. If these history lessons from the saddle speak to you, give us a like, subscribe to the Fat Tire Nomad, and ride along with us. There's a whole lot more to explore, and we'll see you on the next adventure.